So you need to cut some glass, maybe replace a window, maybe you're fixing a post light or an outdoor light, you need to make some glass like this. Never cut glass before? I'm going to walk you through it. This is going to be really for the beginner. Coming up. I'm Roger, welcome to the shop. What I'm going to be showing here is how to cut glass and actually how to salvage some glass out of some old window frames, and even guide you a little bit about if you need to replace a broken window in an old wooden sash. I'll show you how to get that cleaned up. I won't be actually doing any glazing because I'm not doing that here, but I'll show you how to get that old glass out and get the old glazing off. But to start off, what you're going to need, and actually you don't cut glass, you score it and you break it. And there's different types of glass cutters, and I don't have my really good one here. It's up to Restoration House. There's your basic, when you find at the home store. This one's made by Red Devil. They're, I don't know, they're like $3. This one here is a Diamantor, made in Germany. That's a more for doing stained glass. It's got a wooden handle, got a little depression here to put your finger in, and as you're scoring around on stained glass. It's more of a crafting tool than, although it will work for this. Then you have the carbide tip. This one here is a Fletcher, has a carbide wheel on it. And this one here, which looks just like the Fletcher, is called an All-Way. It's also carbide. This was brand new. These will cost you a little bit more than the basic hardened steel ones, but these will last a lot longer. A couple of things you need to remember is once you make that score line, do not go back and go over it again. That'll dull this real fast, and you'll pretty much ruin it. Even with the carbide ones, you don't want to go back over that cut. You want to get it right the first time, and I'll show you how to do that, and what angle to use, and about how much pressure to use, and what that should sound like. Some other things you're going to need. You can buy what they call glass cutting oil. Comes in a little bottle. It's about $8. Or you can get this big thing of 3-in-1 oil. Does the same thing. Or you can even use baby oil. I mean, that works too, but you do need to have the wheel lubricated as you're cutting. Something else that's very critical when you're cutting glass, whether it be new, used, or salvaged, clean it first, both sides. Windex, glass cleaner, whatever you want to use, get it clean, paper towels. Another thing you want is you want a flat surface with nothing on it. A somewhat soft surface. I'm going to use a piece of cardboard here. You don't want to have any granules on there, little chunks or old pieces of glazing, because when you lay your glass down and you start scoring, you could easily break it someplace where you didn't want it to break. So you want a good, flat, somewhat soft surface to cut on. You'll also want, well, you don't have to have, but I recommend it. These are cut resistant gloves. These happen to be made by Magid. ANSI cut level 2. You're handling glass, it has sharp edges. If you're careful, no, you won't get cut on it, but if something goes wrong, well, then you got a problem. Maybe it broke in the wrong place and it slipped and hit your hand. Years and years ago, this way back in the early 80s, I worked for a little while for a glass company when electrical work was slow, and I made windows and cut plate glass and so on, and we didn't wear gloves then, and I did get a pretty nasty cut on the palm of my right hand one time. They didn't have these Kevlar gloves back then, so lesson learned. From there, I usually wore leather gloves when I was working with the heavy plate glass. Okay, so the other thing you're going to need is a piece of glass. And notice I said glass with a GL on the front, guys, so get your mind out of the gutter. So you need a piece of glass to cut, whether it be brand new from the glass company, the home store, the hardware store, wherever you got it, or you can use salvage glass. And I will say a little bit about using salvage glass. Let's say somebody had a storm door, and they don't want it anymore, and they'll say you want the glass out of it. Pass on that. Storm doors, since probably the mid to late 1970s, the glass in a storm door is tempered. If you try to cut and score, I should say score and break tempered glass, yes, you can score it with a carbide wheel, but when you go to break it, you'll end up with a whole bunch of little square redneck diamonds laying everywhere because it'll just shatter into a bunch of little cubes. The only way you can cut tempered glass is with a high-speed abrasive water jet, specialized machine, and you're not going to have one. So just kind of forget about that. If you, as you'll see here, I'm going to take some glass out of a couple of salvage wood sashes from our restoration house project we're doing. One of them had a broken corner, but I'm going to use the rest of the glass to make these pieces for the post light that I'm restoring, which is a whole nother video. And as you look at the glass in the sash, and I'm going to grab one here. Of course, the glass is out of this now, but on the side where the glazing is, hold that sash up and look at it. Over time, glass will bow out towards the sun. So especially if it's on the south or the west side of a building, and if it's, you know, maybe 40, 50 years old or older, that glass could be bowed out towards the sun. If you have a piece like that, just pass on it, because most of the time when you, after you score it and you go to break it, it's not going to break where you want it to. It'll do its own thing. Another thing to look at is on the age of glass, and maybe some people think it's neat, it may have bubbles in it, it may be wavy. If you get into glass that's 100 years old, you'll find a lot of distortion in it, and some people like that for craft projects. Just note that how it breaks is going to be unpredictable. You're not necessarily going to get a good clean cut. So what I'm going to do here next is I'm going to lay a piece of glass down. I'm going to show you a little bit of the basics on how to cut. Okay, I got a couple pieces of scrap glass here. It came out of that broken window. And as I said before, when you're using old glass, it can be unpredictable how it's going to break. Incidentally, if you can't pull a straight line or if you can't follow a line, straight edge would be good to have. You lay a straight edge on there, put your glass cutter next to it, score your line. This will slide pretty easy, so you may want to put a piece of masking tape or something on one side to hold it down. And remember, don't put your straight edge right on the line, because this wheel is a little bit off from the outside edge. So you'd be about 1/8 of an inch off if you put this right on the line. You're going to end up oversized or undersized depending on which side of your glass is a scrap. I'm just going to freehand this. And what I do is just put a little drop of oil on the cutting wheel. Don't need a whole lot. You want to hold the cutter at a 60-degree angle, and you want to apply moderate pressure so that when you're pulling the cutter, it sounds a little bit like something frying in a frying pan, like bacon sizzling or eggs or something like that. Just even pressure. And don't score it twice. And also, and it comes apart just like that. Like I said, sometimes old glass can be unpredictable. I tried another cut earlier on this side and you saw what happened. So it can be unpredictable. Now the next thing I want to show is, let's say you have a bunch of these here to make. Sure your table's clean. So how are you going to do that? Well, clean the edges off. Good. Lay it on a nice flat surface. Make sure there's no dirt around it. You can either use a, I like to use a Sharpie. You could also use a pencil. Trace around it. Like so. And lay your piece of glass over that. If you want to keep it from moving, you can always tape it down on one side. Get your glass cutter. and just follow the line. And there's that unpredictable glass I was talking about when you're using old glass. So if you have that happen to you, it happens when you're using old glass. It's expected. It shouldn't happen to you if you're using new glass, so. There we have it. We have another one of these, just like that. Incidentally, this doesn't work if you're trying to do a mirror. If you think about that, you'll figure out why. Okay, incidentally, if you are cutting mirror, you cut it with the reflective side up. You cut it on the side where you can see yourself. Don't try to cut on the back side, that won't work. If you try to score back there, you're most likely not going to break where you want it to. Now I'm going to show you how to take a piece of glass out of an old wooden sash, whether you're going to use the glass for salvage and experiment with like I just did here as a demonstration. Just keep in mind when you're using old glass, it can be very unpredictable about whether it's going to break on your score line or just take off or break somewhere else. And once again, if it's crowned, don't even bother messing with it. And absolutely don't try to cut tempered glass. It just doesn't work. Here's a little bit of an overview on how to take that little glazing out, get the glazing points out, take a piece of glass out of a wooden sash. So you've got a window you decided to salvage a glass out of. And I'm going to show you how to take that glass out of a wood sash. This is an old wood sash that was taken out of a house. I made sure that the glass had not crowned, as I talked about earlier. This is a handy tool to have right here. It's made by Red Devil. It's actually a glazing tool. The steps I'm going to show you here applies if you're trying to salvage a glass, or maybe you've got one that's broken or cracked and you need to replace it, and it's glazed like this with glazing putty and the glass held in with glazing points. That's what I'm going to cover here. This is in pretty bad shape glazing wise. It's all come off of the bottom side here already. A lot of times you can just, when it's this bad, you can just take your tool, go along the wood, don't hit the glass, and you can get, most of it will just pop off, just like this. Just want to make sure you don't hit the glass. So your first step is going to be to get as much of the old putty off of there and glazing as you can. If you're scraping like this, be very careful, because if you are doing this and you hit one of the glazing points, you'll probably break the glass. If the glass is already broke and you're doing this to replace a broken window, then that's not a big deal, other than it might make a mess. But when you get some stuff that's really stubborn here, there's another way. And here you have to be careful too that you don't overheat it or you'll break the glass. You should use a propane torch and just heat that glazing up. You keep the torch moving, and you may blister the paint on the sash a little bit, but you're going to have to repaint this anyway if you're reglazing. See, that softens it right up. Just do a little bit at a time. Don't try to get too far ahead of yourself. Keep the torch moving. Don't heat the glass up. As you can see, that softens that putty right up. You can also use a heat gun if you don't have a torch, or if you don't want to use a torch. Heat gun works too. Just got to make sure you don't overheat that glass. Putty up there is okay. We got all the glazing out. Turn this off and put it away, or at least put it off to the side so it'll cool off. Now you got this mass of old glazing all over. Well, first thing I'm going to do is get rid of that. And now we got to get down to the glazing points. If you don't know what a glazing point is, it's a little diamond shaped galvanized piece of metal. The best thing to do is to take your tool, the angle tool, and get under it. When you find the point, get under the point and just bend it up a little bit. Then you can come into the side and push on it, and they usually just pop right out. So where's my next one at? One right there, and that one's already bent. As you're doing this, make sure you don't get in between the glass and the sash, or you'll probably break the glass. Here's my next one. Sometimes they can be a stinker. Occasionally you'll run into some that are called push points. Those will just pop right out. Okay, after you get all your points out, you can go, well, if you've got a broken one like this one here, this had a broken corner in it already. You can go around and push up from the bottom a little bit at a time. Don't force it. Make sure it's loose all the way around and that you didn't miss anything. Just work it up a little bit at a time. And there's your sheet of glass. Now, if you're going to be replacing the glass, you would want to take your tool and go through, and you'd want to make sure that this was clean all the way around. Obviously, I'm going to be throwing this frame away. I just wanted the glass out of it. But you'd want to go both directions, both this way and this way. Make sure there was nothing in there before you put your new sheet of glass in. Otherwise, when you go to put in your points and glaze it, you'll probably break the new glass, and you don't want to do that. Okay, there's an overview on a beginning way, if you've never done it before, the basics on scoring and breaking glass. And as I have showed, if you're using old glass like this piece here, just took out of that window, be prepared for it not to go the way you want it to. That happens. If you've got brand new glass, you shouldn't have those issues. Old glass can be very unpredictable. Once again, if it's got a crown to it, you know, if it's 50, 60 years old and it's been on the west or the south side of a building and it's crowned out towards the sun, don't even bother trying to cut it because it's just going to go wherever it wants. So, if you got something out of this, appreciate getting a thumbs up. Always helps the channel. Granted, I didn't go into great detail on this or any type of advanced cutting or how to cut little thin slivers or curves or any of that stuff. That's subject of a whole nother video. This is just the very basics. So appreciate getting that thumbs up if you got something out of it. Of course, we're always looking for subscribers. Next to that subscribe button's a little bell. You click that bell, you'll be notified when I post another video. I'm Roger in the shop. We'll see you on the next one.